Hello, and welcome to another episode, another time for us to talk about The Key. The Key is the book I wrote based upon a revelation that God gave me and my wife. My wife is now in heaven. She had a heart attack in 21. But this book is the book that I finished up after she passed, called The Key. And last week I talked to you about the other half of the key, which is called reparenting. And we talked a little bit about how reparenting came to be. And one of the things we talked about was that we didn't get what we needed as children, so we needed to get it through reparenting. This week I'm going to talk to you about what happens when what is another problem that happens when we don't get what we need. But first, I want to say that this book is available on Amazon, and I highly suggest that you get it because it has a real good opportunity for you to understand what the problem is when you have parents that you can't trust as a child, and what happens, and all the different things. I talk about shame. I talk about unforgiveness. I talk about what happens with fear, how fear and shame work together, how pain actually is used by the devil to cause us major problems. So there's good material in here. I talk about proof for the key, which is soul redemption and reparenting. And I have proof biblically, scientifically, and from great experience. So pick this up. It's a good plan for you. The other thing I want you to be aware of is that because I was a pastor for 12 years, I had a church called Joy Stones Fellowship. And that church was shut down in March 20th of 2020 because when COVID hit, coronavirus hit, we were renting a school auditorium and we were shut down. So the church went away, but Joy Stones Fellowship still exists. I have a website called joystones.org, and if you come to that, you're going to find 40 different videos on different subjects that you will be amazed at the revelations that God gave me and my wife. I have radio shows that we did. I have TV shows that I did on there. So there's over 40, maybe 45 videos on there for your benefit, and it's going to be great. One other thing that you need to know is that there's a Want Help button on the homepage, and that Want Help button, if you press it, and then you write what you want help for. Give me your name and your email. I'll get back to you. And if you're giving me your phone number, I'll call you. But it will be a way for you to get in touch with me, because if you want if you want answers to your questions, I am available here to help you. Well, today we're going to talk about what happens when we don't get what we need as children. Last week I talked to you about reparenting, how we get in a group, and how we talk about, and we listen to each other. We talk about the things that happen to us in the present or the past, and we are listened to, we are heard, and we are loved. And the way we are listened to is intently. We have to be listened to intently. Everybody in the group has the opportunity to be listened to, and everybody in the group has an opportunity to reflect back what the person said, the essence of what the person said, and that causes an emotional connection, which I told you last week. And so we're wired by God for emotional connection. So what the devil's after is to see to it that we don't get emotional connection. And one of the ways he does that is by bringing pain, triggering parents, causing parents to cause pain to their children. And then children won't trust their parents. If they can't trust their parents, they're going to be living in emotional pain. And I'm going to talk about that right now. What we're going to talk about today is the results of what happens to us when we don't get what we need as children. And really what happens is we don't have emotional maturity. See, just because we have physical maturity does not mean we have emotional maturity. We have a lot of people that are emotionally immature. In fact, most of the body of Christ, I'd say 70 to 90%, are emotionally mature, maybe even 95% emotionally immature. And so we have a problem. Houston, we have a problem. And the problem is emotional maturity is a serious problem in the body of Christ, because God can't give his assignments, his money, all the things he wants to do to emotionally immature people, because they won't handle it properly. So we are going to talk about 3 stages of emotional maturity. Now, what is emotional maturity? Emotional maturity is the result of a child having their needs met and their tasks done for whatever developmental stage that they're in. Now, I'm going to use 3 different types of emotional levels, if you will. Emotional levels. I'm going to use 3 types, or 3 stages, let's put it that way. Piaget and other experts in developmental psychology have 8, they have 7, they have 6, whatever. I'm going to use 3 today. There's more, but I can use 3 because if we can get to the adult level of emotional maturity, life is very good. We can actually have heaven on earth, and it'll be pretty profound. So I'm going to use infant, child, and adult. And Dr. James Wilder uses those. He came up with it, and so I'm going to use that. And what ends up happening is that we're going to talk about what was supposed to happen and what parents were supposed to do for us. The first thing they were supposed to do for us as a baby, a baby, let me get that all straight there. A baby is supposed to have their needs met quickly and fully by parents that are ready to be able to meet the baby's needs. What do I mean by that? Well, a baby cries, and when a baby cries, parents are supposed to hear that cry and find out, what does the baby need? Does the baby got diaper problems? Does the baby hungry? Is the baby got colic? What's the baby's problem? Is the baby scared? What's the baby's problem? And that problem needs to be met quickly and completely. Why is that so important? Because that builds trust. See, if I'm a baby, and we were all babies at one time, I have a way that God gave me to be able to get my needs met, and that's to cry. I need to cry. If I cry and my needs aren't met, I'm going to have a problem of trusting the people that are supposed to meet my needs. And what's really going to happen is I'm not going to be able to bond. That's the word that behavioral scientists and psychologists use, is a concept of bonding. Just think of it as emotional glue. In other words, I'm not going to be able to be glued to my parents. And so that's going to be a real problem, because if I can't be glued to my emotionally to my parents, I'm going to have serious problems for the rest of my life. So it's very important for those that are of you that are listening, that are parents, you got to have that emotional glue. If you don't have that emotional glue, it's just a bad deal. It's not going to work out well. The reason is because God wired babies to cry when when they have something they need. If that need is met quickly and completely, in other words, the baby is changed, the baby gets, all that poop off or whatever they've got, the poopy or the diaper with the urine in it, that's going to help the baby feel comfortable. If the baby's hungry and mom is breastfeeding, mom needs to breastfeed the baby at whatever time. Remember, parents, this may sound harsh, but it's reality. You wanted a baby. You wanted a child. You wanted this baby in the worst possible way. Well, this baby's going to keep you up at night. This baby has needs that have to be met. And you get the honor and the privilege given by God for you to act like, to model God, to do what God would do. What does God do? Well, he meets needs of people that ask him, like a baby crying. He soothes, he comforts, he nurtures, he loves, he accepts, he approves. You got to do the same thing for your baby. It's vitally important. And if it doesn't get done, there's going to be serious problems for that baby that grows into an adult. Serious problems. Let's talk about one of those problems. If baby, Dr. Spock in the 50s, many of you probably never heard of Dr. Spock, but in the 50s, he came up with a conclusion that if you let babies cry, that's a good thing. Well, I'm going to tell you something. That's absolutely not a good thing because they will not be able to trust. Just let them cry and cry and cry and don't meet their needs. Guess what? They've done studies, and if a baby doesn't get its needs met quickly and completely and keeps crying and crying and crying and crying, you know what they do? They eventually give up crying because they believe that their needs are not going to be met. They actually go through trauma. You say, well, some people say to me, well, I don't know why I need your book because I never had parents that traumatized me. Well, I'm going to tell you something. If you had to cry and you didn't get your needs met, then you were traumatized. Trauma is very, very interesting concept when you realize that brain scientists say that trauma is any time the central nervous system is overwhelmed. That can happen in a market when a young child wanders away from mother. They think, if they can't find her in a quick enough time, they think they're going to die. That's serious trauma. But let's get back to this. What happens when a baby can't bond? When a baby can't bond with their parents because parents didn't get and meet that need and get it met quickly, and they can't trust their parents, in the baby stage and in the infant stage, what's going to happen is they're going to have a problem trusting their parents as they grow older. Now, Satan makes sure that they can't trust their parents because the parents are going to bring them some sort of pain, neglect, some sort of pain, abuse, whatever. And so now that baby that's now a child that grows into adult, as an adult, that adult is going to have a hole in their soul. And it's called attachment pain. If they don't get bonded or attached, a baby, infant, child that grows into an adult will have attachment pain. And they'll have it for the rest of their lives. That's not a good thing, folks. That's not good at all. So people that don't get bonded or attached, and that's most people, by the way, what's going to happen is they're going to be in attachment pain. Low-level pain that they just learn to live with and survive with. Now, if you can't trust mom and dad to meet your needs, who are you going to trust? Well, you're going to trust yourself. And as soon as you start trying to trust yourself, you're going to literally be in a place where Satan has serious control and can cause you lots of problems. But that's the problem in the body of Christ. As I said last week, that's a serious problem in the body of Christ. So we have infant tasks that need to be met. We have infant needs that need to be met. One of the biggest needs for an infant child, young child, is that they need to learn how to ask for their needs to be met. Now, a baby does it by crying. A young child may still cry. That's not the best way. They need to just say, I need this. And then they need to receive and they need to give. Okay? As a young child, they can start to give back to their parents by obeying them, by, doing all kinds of different things, cuddling and this thing and smiling and so on and so forth. But it's receive and give, okay? And that happens actually as the child gets older. But the main thing that happens with children that can't trust their parents is they have this hole in the soul, so they're always looking for attention. You know people like this. You may be one of these people, always looking for attention. You need to perform to get attention. And so we don't want that to happen, because that then causes us to go to God and other people we need to get attention from. Well, if you need to get attention from other people, then you are codependent on that person. You are dependent on that person to give you attention. Well, that's only because your parents didn't do what they needed to do. And so a baby cries, but also what happens is that if the needs are not met, what can happen is a baby can get, and a young child, infant, can get stuck because they believe things about themselves that aren't true. Remember, I've talked to you about that before. So they trigger. They don't have emotional resilience. They have emotional upset. Little things bother them, big things, different things bother them. Well, Satan makes sure the parents bring pain, so that brings this false belief and series of false beliefs, because Satan reinforces it over and over again. What we believe about ourselves that's not true, he reinforces it over and over again. And so that will keep false beliefs that are not resolved by soul redemption or in a reparenting type of concept. What happens is that keeps them stuck. Keeps them stuck at the infant level. Some psychologists believe that 70 to 80% of all the men in the United States, Christian or non-Christian, are at the infant level of emotional maturity. That means they're takers. That was me. That was me. I was a taker. I never got what I needed from my mother or my father. And so I was looking for love in all the wrong places with all the wrong faces. And what ended up happening is that I was stuck at the infant level. And so I didn't have emotional resilience. I got stuck in my emotions. I was afraid of my emotions. You may be afraid of your emotions. I was actually numb. And what happened is that I would get stuck. I mean, a baby is supposed to be taught by their mother to come out of an emotion, a negative emotion, in 90 seconds. Well, that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen to the baby that's stuck, or to the infant that's stuck, or to the toddler that's stuck. How did they get stuck? They got stuck believing things that weren't true about themselves, and then when triggered, not being able to get back into an emotional place where they could get back to joy. So what we're talking about is stuck. Well, what happens when the baby now becomes, and the infant now becomes into the 3 to 12-year-old area of their lives? They're toddlers, and then they're small children, and they are stuck at the infant level. Well, they then cannot go to the child level. You cannot skip. You cannot skip. Some people do skip, and we call those people pseudo-mature. They actually grew up too fast. That was the story of my wife. It's in the book. And she grew up too fast because she was the oldest of 10. She was changing diapers at 3. That may have happened to you. And if it did, you've got to go back to the infant level and the child level. What's the child level? The child level is where a child 3 to 12 learns to take care of themselves. They learn that the world doesn't revolve around them. The baby knows the world revolves around them. They're totally dependent. We're now trying to build, or the child, at the child level, building a self. Building a self has to, a child has to, from 2 to 5, 2 to 4, has to really build a self. Well, how do they build the self? By imitation from their parents. That's why being a parent is such a powerful, dramatic thing. It's very, very dramatic to try to build a self from parents that are broken. Parents are supposed to mirror. If the mirror is broken, then what happens? They don't get a good image of who they are. They have no self-image. They're insecure. They didn't bond, they didn't attach, so they're in attachment pain, plus they got a mirror that they're looking at that's all broken, and so they don't have a good self-image. They also really end up in a situation where they have the inability to express themselves well. They don't know how to talk about their lives at age 3 to 5 to 6 to 7 in there. They're maybe more reserved. They're more shut down. And so what happens is they can't express themselves. They can't tell their parents what they need. They also can't do hard things. That's a big deal. Because if you couldn't trust mom and dad, you can't be nurtured enough to be able to get through the hard things. So we have a lot of people in our world today, especially the Gen Zs. The Gen Z kids never learn to do hard things. That's one of the reasons they're so susceptible to this stuff that they're going through, is because they couldn't do hard things. They couldn't trust their parents. You have to have the nurturing and the listening and the mirroring from parents to have a self that can do hard things. They also needed to be able to get the fuel to be able to do things and make mistakes. A lot of people will be in a situation where they can't make mistakes. They just are not able to make mistakes. And so perfectionists are afraid of making a mistake. If you're a perfectionist, it's going to be a problem, because you're going to be not able to trust God, but you're going to be afraid to make mistakes. You can't do new things. You can't do the things that are unpredictable and uncertain. And so that's a big problem. Children need to be able to get into doing new things. They need the support of their parents, but if they don't get them, then they end up not having the patience or the ability to be able to have perseverance to get through the hard things. And so, some parents believe that, it's better for them not to have to do hard things. They don't have, they're not have self-control. They have very hard time having delayed gratification. So now you see that children who didn't trust parents because they were not bonded and they were not attached, and because they were hurt, pain in some way, really are not prepared for life. And so we have adult children and we have adult infants. By the way, adult children usually marry adult infants. An adult child marries an adult infant child, and it makes for a very poor marriage. So what do we want to get to? We want to get to the adult level of emotional maturity. That's where we have done all the things that I've just mentioned as an infant and as a child, and now we're moving into the adult level of emotional maturity. This is where life really gets good. This is where the abundant life is. This is where God is trying to move us. Because in the adult level of emotional maturity, our needs have been met. We can give and receive. There's so many people that are the rescuers. There's so many people that are, care what people think. At the adult level of emotional maturity, this is where a person has very little care of what people think because they know who they are, and what people think, if it doesn't match up, they don't worry about it. They also have mutual reciprocity in relationships. It's a big word. What does it mean? It means that they can give and take. They can give and take. And they are able to be trusting God enough to know that He's for them and He's with them. And so they begin to ask God, and they can receive from God, and they can receive from each other. They don't take up too much of the conversation. They don't take up too little of the conversation. They're ready and willing to be in life-giving relationships. At the adult level of emotional maturity, they have life-giving relationships. And it's so important to have life-giving relationships because you know what life-giving relationships bring? Joy. And the joy of the Lord is our strength. Our brain scientists tell us we run on joy. And so we need joy. But how are we going to have joy if we were never bonded, never attached? We could never trust our parents. We can't trust God. We can't get there. So we need to get to the adult level of emotional maturity. I have that all in one chapter, and I'm going to tell you that if you don't have life-giving relationships, you can have life-giving relationships. All you need to do is get the book. All you need to do is listen to this video, do the things that I've told you that you must do. Those are get your needs met in a group with other people, and you get your task done, and then you go from infant to child to adult. And at the adult level, that's where a marriage can be a heaven on earth. That's where work with different people can be heaven on earth. That's where a relationship with yourself can be heaven on earth, and that's where a relationship with God can yield fruits that are heaven on earth. A relationship with the God who is always good yields such great fruit